You're listening to Fulfilling Career, Happy Life, the podcast for accomplished professionals who want to identify what's next in their career and make it happen without compromising what matters most. I'm your host, Randi Roberts, an executive and career life coach, and I'm glad you're here. If you want to feel more energized about your work again, this show is for you. So let's get into it. This episode is another in the series of discussions around the career satisfaction pillars. And I have with me today, Margot, a real client of mine that I've been working with for quite some time. And the reason that I asked Margot to join is because some of these pillars naturally came up in conversation at our last session. So in particular, today, we're going to be focusing on leadership and making a difference. So Margot, thank you so much for joining and agreeing to share your thoughts with me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Okay. So as you know, the purpose of the career satisfaction assessment is so that people who are sort of having that, their career it's itchy. They're not jumping out of bed in the morning the way they were. Something just isn't right. And so the purpose of the career satisfaction assessment is to help identify what might be missing, what might not be working as well as it did, so that we can do some things to fix it. So that's the purpose of it. And today we're going to focus on leadership and making a difference. So let's start with leadership. And if you can, Margot, tell me a little bit when you think about leadership and why that's important to you in your career. Just tell me what your thoughts are. Why is that important and what does that mean for you?
Well, great question. I think it's important to me because I have now been in a career for a very long time. I've had lots of different career paths, as you know, both in the business world, in education world and all that. And I do know without a doubt that a good leader can make or break your feeling of contentment, success, and satisfaction in your career. That's been a key element for me in all my experiences. And so I look for key leaders to not only make good business decisions, but good team decisions for the individuals, right? Because a good leader, a good manager can make or break. And, you know, I have been very, very fortunate that I've had experiences from really good leaders and I've had experiences from really bad leaders. And I say that's fortunate because I wouldn't know the difference if I didn't have the difference, right? And so I can really appreciate those leaders that can connect to the individuals and yet make really tough decisions to drive the business forward. I can really appreciate that. And on the other side, I can recognize those leaders that can't do that, right? And so I tend to be, I don't want to say judgmental, but I tend to value the leader as a result or impact to where I want to go in that organization, right? Yeah. And so that's a key component for me to decide if I'm going to be pursuing a career under that leader or not, right? So that's why it's important for me.
I think you said some things there that are really important. Some of the things that you expect from your leader are, of course, good business decisions, but also good team decisions. They set the culture. Those things are critical. The fact that you've had good and bad leaders and you recognize the opportunity in both, because I think any of us who have had long careers have worked for people that were really motivating to us and worked for people that were not. And if we're going to go through that pain, we may as well get something out of it, which is recognizing what you need and that kind of thing. So That's really helpful. Thank you. Where did you score yourself on the assessment in terms of leadership? 10 being practically perfect and 1 completely dissatisfied. Now, where are you now?
I would say I am a 5 now.
Okay.
I can tell you that if I answered this question 2 or 3 years ago, I probably would have been a lot higher, I think.
Okay.
I've probably slipped in where I think I'm a leader because I have been striving to advance my career, and I've hit a lot of roadblocks. And so my confidence level in my leadership is not there, those skills. And so I'm kind of reassessing that right now, I think, as you know,
it's
where
interesting,
I am
Mark.
today.
You shifted into a different important dynamic, because we were talking about sort of your leadership, and now you're talking about yourself as a leader, and they are both critical. The clients that I work with mostly have leaders and are leaders. So I'm really glad you brought up this additional element of it as well.
Yeah. And I have to tell you that I think it's a reflection of the leadership that I'm under today, right? So there is doubt. I have doubt in what I can lead in what I can pursue. And I think that's part of the leadership that I'm part of today. Now, I like to think that I'm a stronger leader than that, but the reality is I kind of feel like leadership is one of those key components for advancing your career. Not only the leadership qualities within yourself and in your role, but also what your leadership expects from you. And I think that if you don't have those two defined clearly, it's hard to get anywhere, right? And so even though I kind of feel I have a good understanding of my leadership skills and abilities, I don't feel that the expectations have been set properly about how to exercise those leaderships. So maybe I'm tapping into a little bit of poor leadership skills, but I think both of them have to be well balanced for you to get anywhere in your career or to feel satisfied, right? I think that's part of why I'm a little itchy, to use your words now, is simply because I kind of always felt like I had it. I have responsibilities, large enough responsibilities that obviously the organization has put confidence in me to hold, but getting out of that and getting on to the next step has been difficult for me. And I think that's because I don't have clear expectations of where I'm supposed to be going.
Okay. And, an interesting dynamic there for those of us who have worked for large corporations, as was much of my career, as you now do, even if you're in a situation where you're working for the leader that you want and motivated by that, and the expectations are clear, as you just mentioned, maybe missing for you now, things change. Companies reorganize, people get promoted or leave, and a situation that was a certain way sort of becomes redefined because a new person drops into that role. So these are important things to understand about yourself and what you need, because those things will continue to change. So if you're at a 5, there's certainly room for, it's not terrible, but there's certainly room for improvement. It's sort of neutral on a scale of 1 to 10, and you have been higher. What difference would it make for you if you were able to dial that up, say, to a 7?
Oh, it would make a tremendous difference to me. I mean, there's leadership skills, which I think that I have, and being recognized as a leader are two different things. And I think structurally, if there's organizational changes that happen, and you're a result of that structural change, the perception, not only do you feel the perception that maybe I'm not as strong a leader as I thought I was, but you also have to have that blessing from your leaders. And so for recognition from me for a job well done, or asking me or challenging me with something in a leadership, that goes a long way. That, to me, like, if I find that I have the confidence of other people, whether it's my teammates, whether it's my management, whether it's my skip levels or BPs, that goes a long way with me getting a little bit more confident about my own leadership skills. But when that's missing, that's where I start to doubt my own leadership skills. But if I had that recognition of those challenges, I probably would, 7 would be great. I'd be feeling a lot more satisfied.
Okay. It's interesting what you're saying, because it sounds like what's really missing right now is some validation of the work that you're doing and the leadership that you're exerting with your team and that kind of thing. And the challenge with that is there's only so much of that you can control. You can focus on doing the right things that are worthy of recognition, but you kind of can't control whether that recognition comes.
No, you can't. And that's what I think is challenging about having a career if those things don't exist. I think one of the reasons you picked leadership for me is because that's always been like a main theme of what makes me satisfied. For other people, it may be other things. But that, like, I think this about me. I'm an athlete, right? I've always been competitive at a high level. And there's nothing like having a great coach that challenges you, pushes you, have confidence in you. And I kind of bring that persona into everything that I do. Like, I want that same coach level in my career. And when I get someone that's connected to me and pushing me and challenging me, and that's where that's where I really feel like that's the sweet spot for me.
Yeah.
Right. And I can exercise it all I want. I could be the captain of my team. I could be the best player on the team. But unless I have that confidence level to, make the next step, whether that's being the coach or being the assistant coach or whatever, there's value in getting recognition or validation in your career if you're not at the top. Actually, it's probably, even if you're at the top, you still want that validation. I think that's an important thing. But I have to tell you that because I know it's important to me, I also make it a point of what I do when I am leading or managing other people, right? I make it a point to validate them in their role and to encourage them and connect with them and challenge them, because I know that's what's important to me.
Right. Absolutely. Do you think, is there anything you can identify that you can do that you're not doing to dial up that need for or the recognition that you're seeking or the acknowledgement of your contributions?
Yeah, well, I think I'm kind of in this situation now, and you've heard this from me. I've had 7 managers in 2 years, right? So it's been really tough for me to gain any momentum. And when I say 7 managers, I've also had 7 different skip level managers. So even going one layer above has been difficult because there hasn't been anybody there for so long.
And I also know there's been significant periods of time where there's been a gap. There's been a hole in that
huge
role.
Gap, okay. months of gaps. So, I've just been kind of plugging along. I think the biggest thing that I need to do is I kind of need to start advocating and promoting the work that I do today. Right now that things have kind of settled down, I have a new manager now. He was actually my same manager 5 managers ago, but I'm in a different role. So I think that's part of what I need to get on a campaign to just start getting more visible. It's interesting because I mentor, I have my own mentors that I mentor at night. And I was talking to my mentee last night. And I said, listen, there's one thing to be a networker. Like, you can connect all these people, you can network with this. And I know this person, I know this, but it's a different thing to be a connector. A connector means that you can draw synergies from people for everyone's benefit, right? So not just a networker, but a connector. And I kind of feel like when I was talking to her, I kind of hit a nerve with myself that basically says, if I want to exercise my leadership skills a little bit more, I need to start connecting my work to the value in the business, right? So I need to start getting people in that connection, not just awareness, but value in the work that I do, right? So that's on me to do. I need to get onto a promotion campaign for Margot's work.
Right.
Yeah.
So as your coach, I can't wait to work on that with you, because as our listeners can tell, you're incredibly coachable. You believe in that process. You have been a basketball coach. Mm-hmm. And I'm honored that you choose to do that work with me. So we'll work more on that in one of our sessions. Okay. But for the purposes of today, if you feel that it would benefit you to go on a campaign, to advocate for your work and show the clear connection for what you're doing and how it benefits the business, what's one step you can take to start moving that forward?
I think I have to find the right stakeholders that care, right? I think I have to elevate the conversation and find the people that care about the message more, right? Because this is not about, I need to take the me out of the conversation, right? I've been on a very aggressive path to try to get promoted and recognized and things like that. And I've decided that making it about me is not going to work. It's got to be about the work that I do. It's got to be about the work that I do to the value of the company. And I always feel like I'm in a really unique position where I am today. And I need to start making people understand how unique that position really is, because I have a broad sense of how everybody plays in this organization. And I think that's unique. And my broad sense is also a good majority of what my company, how my company performs, right? So I need to start elevating that position and that perspective so that other people kind of recognize that. And I've kind of started that a little bit, like those kind of light bulbs have gone off, I think, recently with talking to you, Randi. And I think I've kind of subconsciously started that path a little bit.
Well, I hear you saying a couple of important things. One is the finding the stakeholders, people that will advocate for you, making those things happen. But you're also talking about the message and making sure that it's connected to the business. You said, take me out of the message so that it's received in a different way. So I think those are two really, really solid steps you can take towards this, as you put it, campaign of advocating for yourself. I can't wait to get going on that with you. I think this leads beautifully into the next pillar that we want to talk about, which is making a difference, because some of this message is in how you make a difference, right? And the difference that you make knowing this for yourself, but also for the business. But before we dive into that, if you could tell me, where did you score yourself on the element of making a difference today?
Well, it's interesting because, again, 2 years ago, I would have put it much, much higher. But today I ranked it as a 5. And I think that's only because of all the structural changes that I've been going through and different managers and all that. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure that I am making a difference, right? I know that people value my work, but I don't have that feedback cycle today. So I'm in doubt about making a difference. And as you know, making a difference, of all the things that are on this career satisfaction assessment, that's probably the number one for me. And I think I told you this like a year and a half ago when we started, which was, that's the biggest thing for me, is I want to know that the work that I do every day makes things better for other people or for our business or for our stockholders. I think that's why I have a different perspective of what we do, because, at the end of the day, isn't it always about making a difference for everything? I mean, isn't that why we get up in the morning, right? And if you feel like you can't make a difference today, why bother? And so I fluctuate between those two days. Sometimes I go, okay, I'm going to land this message today with this leader and it's going to go great. And then there's other days that I'm like, okay, I'm not heard. Nobody really cares. You know what I mean? So that's why I think I'm in 5.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. Thank you for explaining that. What's interesting though, if you have such fluctuations on how you feel, it sounds like on the scale of making a difference, there are days when you're feeling a lot higher than 5. And there are days when you're feeling lower than 5. And I hear how important it is to you. You're a mission-driven person. You want to know that your significant efforts are adding value in some way. So what do you do on the days when you're feeling even lower? Like, how do you pick yourself up and keep moving forward? Because you're very resilient.
That's a good question. How do I pick myself up and keep going? I don't know. I guess on days where I feel like, why am I bothering today? I guess what keeps me going is I tend to pull back. Well, I definitely pull back. I know I pull back. I pull back, I withdraw, but I think that withdrawal allows me to kind of get a broader picture, right? Like if I get stuck in the minutia and the details of a project that I feel like, no one's going to hear this, no one's going to care, whatever. If I get that mantra in my head, I tend to kind of withdraw and pull back. And I think pulling back is what gives me a broader perspective of the broader initiative or the purpose or the goal of that project. So I think that's how I keep going.
It's really interesting what you just said, because what I was expecting when you first said, on the down days where you're not sure you're making a difference, you withdraw a little bit. My thought went to, oh, that makes sense. If you're demotivated and whatever, you kind of disengage, but you see a purpose in it, which is to kind of reset and give yourself an opportunity to see the big picture and re-engage. It's really interesting.
Yeah. And, I used to beat myself up about that. I used to beat myself up about being so, lack of a better word, emotional about being demotivated, right? Or getting an unfair shake at something or not feeling like I'm making a difference. I used to beat myself up about that. I don't anymore. I don't, because I don't think everybody wakes up every morning going, yeah, I'm ready to go. I mean, there's just no way you can do that every single day of your work day. And so I don't beat myself up. I give myself, and this is just recently, I've allowed myself to withdraw. And sometimes it's a withdrawal for 3 hours. Like sometimes I just have to cancel meetings and just withdraw and say, I need a different perspective. And sometimes it takes time. And I don't beat myself up about that. I used to be very driven, make all my meetings, be on time, deliver things in timeline. And now if I feel demotivated, I don't beat myself up because it happens. It's just part of the happens. It's about how you come back. And I think that's what I focus on now, is how I'm going to come back.
Yeah. It always occurs to me how important self-awareness is to so many aspects of our performance and our career and even our lives. And you have sort of, it seems like accidentally tripped upon a technique that really works for you when you're feeling that way. And it may be hard to give yourself permission to not show up for meetings or cancel something or whatever. But essentially what I'm hearing is that 3 hours or whatever time it is an investment in moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Smart.
And I have to tell you, I think there's another dynamic here that I've recently become self-aware about. And that is that I take a lot of social cues, body language, all that. I've always been that type of person, right? I like being in a room with somebody. And what I've had to adjust is that everything now is on Zoom or Teams or whatever, and I can't always read the person. And that has left me kind of empty a little bit, because feedback's really important to me, super important to me. And if I can't get it from your body language or your responses, whatever, I assume the worst. I assume, well, it must be negative, right? And I have to stop myself with that. listen, we're in a hybrid world now. This is the world it is. You know, I have to stop myself from thinking it's the glass is half empty, right? It is half full. That no feedback usually means good feedback, right? Not the other way around. So I've had to kind of adjust to that as well. But also, back to the leadership point, I do know that could be systemic to a lot of people I talk to. So now I make it a point to make sure that if someone's doing something for me, that I want to make sure they know they made a difference for me, right? And so I've kind of flipped it. I recognized it in myself, and now I'm trying to compensate for that for other people because they could be feeling the same way. But I wish my leaders did that.
Yeah, I love that so much because, I mean, you know, the things that you and I talk about, there's so much we can't control, and we always focus in on what can we control. What are the steps you can take to influence the situation? And you are putting that positive energy, that validation, that showing people how they make a difference out there in the universe. And I believe those things catch fire and will come back to you. And it's what you can control. It's really admirable that you step up and do that for others.
I try. Yeah. I don't have a whole lot underneath me, but what I do have is I hope to be impactful for that.
Yeah.
I think it makes other people enjoy working with you, right? When they know they can get feedback about how they did, or, you know, a meeting they were in on or participated in. And so that's super important to me.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the world we live in is we always have more to do than we can do. And if you're that person that appreciates and recognizes, and that you're the one that people want to go that extra mile for. So maybe just right there in that way, it comes back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
It's great. Margot, thanks so much for joining today and for sharing your thoughts on leadership and making a difference. You just so naturally show sort of how those two things are connected and why they're so important. I think a lot of this will resonate for some of our listeners. Thanks so much for listening to Fulfilling Career Happy Life. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, follow, rate, and review. Do all the things to show your support for this podcast. It helps other professionals who want to feel more energized about their work again find us. And if you want to take this thinking further, please follow me on LinkedIn, where I share content on a regular basis. You can also get on my email list by downloading the Career Satisfaction Assessment or through my website. All these links are in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. I truly appreciate that you make the time for yourself to listen to the show. See you next week.